When we were talking about impeachment, there was a lot of political pressure not to impeach the president when the Democrats won control of the House. There was some sense of get on with the work of the people. And others said, and a lot of people used the legal argument, that there's an obligation to do something. If the president has committed impeachable offenses, there's an obligation. It's not a preference. Where do you stand on this? Is there an obligation for the Biden administration to pursue Donald Trump's criminality from when he was in office or prior?
So we're going to be in a very different situation. We're going to be, as of January 20th, 2021, in a situation where we no longer are talking about indicting the president, but rather a former president, somebody who is a civilian. And the question is going to be, does the rule of law apply to that person? And it's very hard to see an argument if it is shown, for instance, that in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office that the president has committed tens of millions of dollars of tax fraud or bank fraud or both, and any other person would normally be prosecuted, then it really shouldn't be the case that just because he becomes president, that he shouldn't have the day in court where a jury decides whether or not he committed those crimes prior to becoming president. And with respect to his conduct in office, you have to remember in the Mueller report, there is substantial evidence that the president obstructed justice. In other words, obstructed the special counsel investigation. And to me, that's even more important to vindicate. If you are not going to hold a president accountable for a special counsel investigation obstruction, then there's no reason to actually have a special counsel in the future. In other words, the precedent that you're setting in the future is don't bother appointing a special counsel because there isn't going to be any accountability to a president who obstructs that investigation.
Is that an animal over your right shoulder?
That is my English Cocker Spaniel, making himself very comfortable.
Very cute. That was very cute. I want you to evaluate this statement from the New York Times Magazine. It says the stakes of an indictment could be very high. Putting him on trial for his conduct as president would be tantamount to putting on trial more than 72 million Americans who voted for his reelection. How do you evaluate that?
I think that's looking at it the wrong way. Remember, a jury is going to have to make the decision and is going to have to find proof beyond a reasonable doubt. In the same way, any other defendant is entitled to all of the due process rights that we have in this country. And Donald Trump, if he were to be indicted, whether federally or by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, would enjoy all of those same rights in the same way, for instance, that Paul Manafort went to trial and a jury made up of citizens from a cross-section of the community made a decision, regardless of politics, whether someone's a Democrat or a Republican, just on the facts and the law. And Donald Trump would face the same kind of jury making that determination.